What if I told you that one man, 1,000 years ago, explored ideas strikingly similar to Isaac Newton's law of motion and René Descartes' "I think therefore I am"? Meet Avicenna, a revolutionary thinker whose insights into existence, self-awareness, and the natural world were far ahead of his time. From his thought experiments that align with the modern consciousness studies, to his philosophical concepts that sparked debates involving Hume and Aquinas, his genius continues to inspire. Stay tuned as we uncover the life and legacy of this visionary whose ideas still shape how we understand the world. Avicenna, also known as Ibn Sina, was born in 1980 AD in Afshana, near Bukhara in modern-day Uzbekistan. He was born into a Persian family, and his early education was remarkable. By the age of 10, he had memorized the Quran and mastered subjects like literature, mathematics, and the natural sciences. His intellectual brilliance became evident as a teenager, when he began studying medicine and practicing as a physician by the age of 16. By 18, Avicenna was a renowned scholar and physician, gaining access to large libraries that further enriched his knowledge. Over the years, he served as a court physician and advisor to rulers across Persia and Central Asia, navigating political upheavals while continuing his intellectual pursuits. Despite these challenges, he wrote over 450 works, with around 240 surviving today, including his landmark text, the Canon of Medicine, and the Book of Healing. These texts had a lasting influence on both the Islamic world and Europe, cementing his legacy as one of history's greatest thinkers. Now moving on to his philosophical work, Avicenna's philosophy centered on the distinction between essence and existence, a concept that became a cornerstone of his metaphysical thought. Essence refers to what something is, its fundamental nature or definition. For example, the essence of a chair is that it is a piece of furniture designed for sitting, typically with a seat, legs, and a backrest. Existence, on the other hand, refers to whether something actually is, whether it really exists in reality. While the concept of a chair exists in our mind or in a blueprint, an actual chair must be built to have physical existence. Avicenna argued that just because we can define or imagine something, being its essence, it doesn't mean that it necessarily exists in reality, being its existence. For instance, we can define and imagine a unicorn, a horse-like creature with a single horn, but that doesn't mean a unicorn actually exists in reality. This distinction laid the groundwork for one of Avicenna's most important ideas, the difference between possible existence and necessary existence. Possible existences, or mumkinul wujud, are things that have the potential to exist but depend on external factors to come into being. Most things we encounter in our daily life fall into this category. For example, a tree is a possible existent because it relies on sunlight, water, and nutrients for it to exist, and it could just as easily not exist. This distinction between essence and existence naturally led Avicenna to question the origin of the universe itself. Avicenna applied this idea to the universe itself, arguing that the universe is a possible existent, as it could have not existed at all. This led him to ask, if everything in the universe is a possible existent, what caused it to exist? He concluded that there must be a wajibul wujud, a necessary existence, something that exists by necessity and does not depend on anything else. For Avicenna, that was God. God is the necessary being that brings everything else into existence, but is not dependent on anything else. This idea is central to Avicenna's famous proof of the truthful which argued that reason alone, without relying on physical evidence or scripture, could prove the existence of a necessary existent. Avicenna reasoned that everything in the universe is contingent. It depends on something else. However, this chain of dependence cannot go on infinitely. There must be a necessary existent that exists by its own nature and causes everything. For Avicenna, this being could only be God, the foundation of all existence, as without it, nothing else could exist. While influential, Avicenna's concept of the necessary existent sparked significant debate. Al-Ghazali, an Islamic theologian, critiqued Avicenna's rationalist approach to arguing that it relied too heavily on reason at the expense of divine revelation. He contended that Avicenna's philosophy blurred the line between God as an eternal creator and the created universe, risking a view where God becomes more of a necessary principle than a personal and interactive deity. In the West, David Hume questioned whether the idea of a necessary being was logical, suggesting that the universe might simply exist without a cause. Immanuel Kant later argued that existence isn't a property that can define something into reality. These critiques kept Avicenna's idea at the center of philosophical discussion about the nature of existence. Building on this metaphysical foundation, Avicenna turned his attention to the nature of the soul and self-awareness. His famous floating man experiment explores the immaterial nature of the soul, demonstrating that self-awareness is intrinsic and independent of external factors. In the experiment, Avicenna asks us to imagine a person suspended in the air, completely deprived of sensory input, unable to see, hear, or feel anything, not even their own body. Despite this total isolation, he argued the person would still be aware of their own existence. This awareness, Avicenna believed, proves the existence of the soul as an immaterial and fundamental aspect of being. Interestingly, this idea shares similarities with Descartes' cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, which suggests that thinking itself proves existence. Avicenna emphasized self-awareness as an inherent property of the soul, independent of sensory input, while Descartes approached self-awareness through systematic doubt, using it as a starting point for knowledge. Now, moving on to his contributions to medicine, Avicenna's Canon of Medicine was a groundbreaking text that shaped medical practice for the centuries, both in the Islamic world and Europe. It covered anatomy, diseases, pharmacology, and treatments, offering a systematic and comprehensive approach to medicine. Avicenna emphasized careful observation and diagnosis, introducing concepts like clinical trials to scientifically evaluate treatments. This is the principle central to modern medicine. His descriptions of diseases like tuberculosis and meningitis were highly advanced, and his catalog of medicinal substances laid the groundwork for pharmacology. He also stressed the preventative care, advocating for diet, hygiene, and the connection between mental and physical health. Beyond medicine, Avicenna was also ahead of his time in physics. He proposed that an object in motion would remain in motion unless acted upon by an external force, an idea that mirrors Isaac Newton's first law of motion, presented 6 centuries before Newton. This is just one example of how Avicenna anticipated foundational scientific principles, showcasing his extraordinary intellectual foresight. Today, Avicenna's ideas remain influential, shaping modern debates on metaphysics, consciousness, and the universe's origins. His concepts of essence, existence, and the necessary existent continue to inspire discussions on reality and reason. Avicenna's holistic approach emphasized the integration of philosophy, science, and spirituality, demonstrating the interconnectedness of knowledge. Celebrated in Iran and Tajikistan, his mausoleum in Hamadan stands as a tribute to his enduring impact. Avicenna passed away in 1037 at the age of 56, leaving a legacy that bridges disciplines and continues to inspire through his medical, philosophical, and scientific contributions. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the deep dive into Avicenna's life, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below with your suggestions for future topics. Till next time, stay curious.